Don't get me wrong, influenza kills millions of people. It's not something to mess around with. However, influenza is a virus. You don't need an antibiotic for influenza. That being said, if you have things going on, you might need to go see your healthcare provider. Influenza, you can get ear infections, you can get pneumonia, and those would require an antibiotic. Some people are at a lot higher risk for dying from influenza if you're really old or if you're really young, like newborns. So this is the reason why you get your flu shot. If you're young and healthy and you think, even if I get the flu, I'll be fine. It's herd immunity. You need to get the flu shot to protect your 96-year-old grandma and your 1-year-old nephew from dying from influenza. Okay, everyone around you has influenza. They're dropping like flies. 100 people at the factory called in sick yesterday. They're thinking about shutting down the packing plant because everybody has influenza. Or you work at a nursing home and all the residents have it. So if you start running high fevers, it's pretty certain that you have influenza. Along with the high fevers, you get body aches. I call it the got hit by a truck sign. So if you feel like you got hit by a truck and you have high fevers and influenza is going around, you probably have influenza. Influenza is an upper respiratory virus. It's not diarrhea. Anytime you're sick, you can have diarrhea, gut aches. Sometimes with influenza you get nausea, but it's not gastroenteritis where your main symptom is puking and pooping. Influenza is a respiratory virus, and it kills people when it turns into pneumonia and respiratory failure. You die. Antibiotics are not going to help. Antibiotics are not going to help a virus. Antibiotics are not going to help a virus. Antibiotics treat bacteria. There are antiviral medications, and these are popular because there's commercials out every influenza season by the companies that make the antivirals, but they're not very effective. And for my patients at the free clinic, they're way too expensive. We just can't afford them. They maybe make you slightly less contagious, which, by the way, use hand sanitizer and wash your hands with soap and water and don't cough on people. Antivirals might make you get better a little faster, like half a day faster. They might lessen the severity of the symptoms. If that is worth $80, then I'll prescribe antivirals if a patient wants to pay for them. Sure, I always offer them, but I tell them how much they're going to cost. So then I also always give my list of home remedies and over-the-counter treatments, which mostly just involve trying to boost your immune system. Try to be healthier, stop eating crap. You can manage your fevers and body aches with over-the-counter medications like Tylenol and ibuprofen. Cough medications, the combos like NyQuil and Theraflu really are not worth it. This message is not sponsored by any drug manufacturers, but if you're interested in sponsoring me, I'll sell out for $1 million. Or drink lots of fluids, especially water. If you have diabetes, you need to keep an eye on your blood sugar more closely. If you are not eating because you feel like crap, then you really need to be checking your blood sugars. And don't take your glipizide or your sulfonylurea pills if you are not eating, because they stimulate insulin secretion, so you will drop your blood sugars. Be careful with your insulin. You need to keep taking it, but if you don't eat, don't take your mealtime insulin, because that will drop your blood sugar. Be careful with your metformin. You have to stay hydrated when you are taking metformin, or you can develop acidosis, and that's bad. It doesn't hurt to go in to see your medical provider to make sure everything's okay, especially after a few days of having influenza and high fevers. If you're getting worse instead of better, it's okay to go get checked out. I'll post an extended lecture on the blog on things you can try that are over the counter for influenza. I wrote this lecture actually 5 years ago, and most of the things have not changed. I have become an even bigger fan of kimchi. Fermented cabbage is just darn good for you in every way. You should eat it all the time. But when you have influenza, it will actually help. And it may even help prevent or cure certain influenza viruses. Research is not real great on that because the kimchi manufacturers don't have a lot of money to spend on their research budget. Sauerkraut is another fermented cabbage food that I'm a big fan of. High in vitamin C. If you're not sure that it's influenza, the test is actually not that difficult. It's a swab up your nose. It doesn't hurt, but it makes you feel like you have to sneeze, like the worst sneeze of your life. It's kind of like a toothbrush up your nose. But it's really fast and pretty painless. Just the horrible tickles are painful. The best thing you can do when you have influenza is stay away from people. I don't want you around if you have influenza and you're gonna make all your coworkers sick. So it's better to not go to work than to give influenza to the rest of your coworkers, and then everybody's sick at the same time. And that's a huge loss of revenue for a lot of companies if they have to shut down because all of their workers are sick. So the loss of productivity is pretty huge. The 1 year that I got influenza, I was out for a week. Fevers, I thought it was dead. Horrible. Don't get influenza. Wash your hands. Get your flu shot. It doesn't cause influenza. It doesn't cause influenza. It may cause some muscle aches and fatigue for a couple of days. That's not influenza. Influenza is when you got hit by a truck and you want to die. The flu shot doesn't do that. The flu shot protects you from influenza, and it protects you from being a carrier to give it to everybody else who might die from it. Some days when I'm feeling poetic, I like to walk through old cemeteries. And it's incredibly tragic because you can trend influenza season and the bad years for influenza by how many children's graves there are all in 1 year, because so many people died from influenza before the vaccination was invented. Vaccines are worth it. The best thing that's happened to public health in a long time. I must go to the grocery store and look for kimchi. Or maybe make my own. Oh yeah, I did buy some cabbage. I'm going to make some sauerkraut tonight.